In this video, we're going to talk about the real cost of AI automation for small business. Now, typically, when small businesses approach us to help them do some automation or streamline their business processes, a lot of them may have a budget, most don't, and they would be coming off of something they've watched online where, okay, I did this in for $20 and this is all it's costing. But typically, they miss some of the processes that it takes in order to complete an automation. And in this video, we'll go through some examples of the automation that we've built and how we've saved some businesses thousands of pounds, literally thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars in business expenses just by putting in the right automation. So the $20 automation you see isn't really what it costs to run the automation or to to implement automation in the first place. The $20 might be the subscription to one product, one tool, but that's not the full cost that it takes to put it in the first place. So subscription is visible, but the first year typically would be a bit more expensive than your subscription. So what does it include? You include things like the implementation cost, the audit, the assessment of your business. Sometimes people charge for a discovery as well to find out where the loopholes are and where those solutions will come in. Then you think about the maintenance, error handling, and any internal time that it takes in order to set the solution in place. Now, if you're thinking of bringing in automation and you're strapped for time, do bear in mind that before any automation goes in, you have to allocate the time to help the person who's implementing the solution understand your business and understand those processes that need to be automated. That's how you actually get a return on your investment. You need to think about what comes back to you relative to what you're spending and what you're putting in. And even though it might be time consuming at the beginning, it is very revealing because many businesses don't actually know some of the processes they have to go through without going through this whole sequence of doing the audit and the assessment. They just do things instinctively. Nothing's documented and things just live in people's heads. So the correct question isn't how much is the software, it's really what is the total cost of the first year. The first year would probably be the most expensive because that's what takes the most amount of time and the most number of experts. Now, here's an example of an automation. It looks very simple, essentially a lead generation automation, and it was built for a client that wanted to sign roofers onto their business. So what does this do? This goes into their CRM, pulls out details, pulls out the leads, it validates those leads, and then it calls those leads automatically. And then based on the outcome of the call, the information, the lead plus the outcome of the call, they're all logged in a spreadsheet, a Google sheet. Now, this might look simple, but think of how long it takes to extract this information from people's heads. A lot of the time, they don't yet have a CRM that's well organized. The data there is really poor, or the leads aren't really well documented. They're not all roofers, they're all different people. So you then have to go validate. Now, how do you validate? What things do you check on a daily basis to validate that the information you have is correct? Now, is the roofer in the right jurisdiction? Do you cover the areas where that roofer lives? Is that business still trading? What were the last trading figures? Do they meet the criteria? So you have to qualify those leads. So these are the different things that you'd extract. And then when you call, what kind of call are you making? How often do you call? If the call has a system where you have to press one or press two to move to the next to go through to the right person, how do you handle that? And which path do you take? So these are things that you'd extract and qualify before you even start the automation. So that's where the cost comes, the knowledge, the intelligence that you're putting in and you're trying to document. So one of the first costs you'd want to look at would be software. And the software is not just the subscriptions. In this case, the software would be, you know, in in the last example I showed, you've got multiple things that you're subscribing to. You've got the CRM cost, and then you've got the phone call cost. And if you're on Google and using Google Sheets, you've got the cost of the workspace, Google Workspace. And then also you've got the cost of of the automation platform. So they're called robotic automation robotic platform automation or robotic process automation, something along those lines, RPA. In this case, I showed you Make.com, and Make.com has its own subscription fee. So those are the different things you're paying for. And then you also want to be thinking about how much they charge or how they charge. So you've got different platforms that charge differently. So you've got three major RPA platforms, so automation platforms like Zapier, Make, and NA10. They charge differently. So the expert that you're working with would have to figure out which best suits your solution and whether maybe just building something in co-work might suffice for what you're trying to do. So those are the options that you would typically have. Now, the other cost is the implementation cost. So you're not paying just to connect to apps, really. You're paying for somebody who has experience in doing this sort of thing, bringing their knowledge to your business and helping you understand the best way to lay things out. So mapping of the processes, defining what those business rules are. You know your business, but it would help you extract that information. They would also train your staff, clean up the data. They would help you figure out what format best suits the automation so that you have fewer errors. Then they'll document the workflows that you go through, connect the systems, and then design any AI instructions and help you with the error handling, help you route the calls the way that would best suit your business. So this is where typically in the bit it's called a business logic. How does your business typically operate? Now, what drives the implementation cost? There are five main cost drivers when it comes to the cost of putting something in that works. The volume, so how often do you want this to work? So I mentioned that the different automation platforms charge differently. Some charge for the frequency of the calls you make. Some charge for every single task within the setup. Then how varied would each call be? Is it the same thing that happens each time, or would you have different paths depending on how the lead is qualified, if it's a lead generation system? Now, the other thing is connections. Which other systems do you want to plug in to this automation, into the what you're building? Each one of these steps varies because each one introduces additional intelligence, additional complexity, and additional requirements to smooth it and handle all of the errors that might come or the exceptions that might happen. Now, what happens when something goes wrong? And then the change, how frequently are things likely to change? Do you want them to put something in place that would monitor how the operations are going and make active changes? And do you want a retainer as well for after the solutions has been implemented? The third cost is maintenance. So automations do not just operate on a frozen business. So your business is changing. You come up with ideas as to how you want to increase your revenue, and with those changes, you may typically want to change the automation and the workflows. And if you're changing those workflows, your automation should reflect what your business is doing. You don't want to go back to doing things manually after you've had some automation and then have this Frankenstein monster where you've got half automation and half manual, just because you've not kept up. Uh, your business wouldn't entirely replace humans. You will have some human involvement. But when you have a workflow and suddenly that changes, and then you go in the middle and have to have a human interject before everything goes off on the automated path, that can be very tricky to manage going forward because then it starts getting the complexity just increases. So what things would have to be in place, like password expiration, the APIs that you're connecting to, those may change. The automation platform may also change how they deliver the solutions to their businesses. Employees leave, prices change, new services are introduced. All these things are things that your maintenance agreement would have to factor in. And something also needs to be checking that your system is working on a daily basis. Error handling, I mentioned that already. What happens when something goes wrong? So let's say in the example of the roofer or whichever business you're running, if invalid information comes in and the phone call is made and the call is wrong, what happens then? If in some territories, like in America, where you've got it's illegal to just call with a voice agent if they haven't specifically asked you to call. what do you do if you get a number that says that hasn't been validated? Is that checked? If a number suddenly goes from allow calls to no longer allowing calls, how do you check that? How do you keep things updated? And if you're dialing a number that was working and suddenly stops working, how do you handle those exceptions? All those kind of things. Payment failures. AI gets confused or sends information that is completely wrong, or sends some of your hidden information or metadata. How do you handle that? So these are exceptions that you build in to the workflow. And then at what point do you want humans to be involved? What is your escalation point? The fifth cost is, this one's a bit more hidden. So the internal time that it will take to get the system running. So somebody needs to explain the process. Someone needs to provide access to all of the systems, supply examples, clarify decisions. So even after the assessment, some other questions will come up, and somebody needs to be there to help validate some assumptions that are being made during the automation process. And someone needs to be there to help test that what's been built actually meets the criteria. Yes, you would have the specification, the requirements documents, and everything will be agreed that will be delivered, but someone needs to validate that what's been built actually meets the criteria and would work for your business. So the typical formula is internal hours times true hourly cost. Those are things you want to keep top of mind, and that should be part of the onboarding process. So as an example, a lead inquiry automation, I've shown one earlier, but just as a workflow, let's say an inquiry is received on your website, from your website. You extract the details, the service is identified, your CRM is updated. So that's a workflow. Is that the totality of what you're trying to do, or does something else happen after the CRM is updated? So this is something that you would want to define. Say, so as an example of a first year cost, so just an example. So your initial cost might be for implementation three and a half thousand dollars. Setup time might be $600 for the internal systems, and your initial investment, let's say for argument's sake, is $3,750. Now, the monthly cost for software, 120, maintenance, 180. These numbers are just examples. They're not typically what you'd pay for every single automation. So your first year total is 8,000. Then you want to ask yourself, okay, if this is what the budget must be for one simple workflow, what would it be for something more complicated or less complicated? But that is the cost just for the first year. The monthly cost is what you pay ongoing. Now, is $8,500 expensive? I'll just leave you to think about that. Is it expensive? But if you say that's expensive, then what is it costing you not to have that automation in place? So that's the comparison you'd make. You're a business owner, you know what things cost or what they should cost. If you spend the $9,000 upfront and it's saving you $2,000 or $5,000 every month, then it's a no-brainer, right? One of the clients that we work with in the charity sector, we saved them $13,000 from month one, every month. So, and what they paid, yeah, relative to what they paid is a significant saving, and the CEO is definitely overjoyed by that. So use your gross profit, not the revenue. So obviously, you're paying for the automation out of essentially last month's profit. So will that profit continue to grow, or would you save cost or save time that's equivalent to 10 times what you're spending or 5 times what you're spending putting in the automation? So it's about how would you recover that money. Don't assess it based on your revenue, because really revenue is not really a good measure of whether the automation is doing what it should. But as part of putting in a process or putting in the automation, these measures will be put in to make sure, or these calculations will be done to make sure that the automation is actually delivering value. And a really prudent automation engineer or uh, AI expert that's helping you do your systems would help you figure out if there is any return on your investment even before you start. Because not everything should be automated. Some things are still cheaper being done by humans. So there are three planning levels to factor in or to think about. One is where you're assisted, so AI does all the drafting and recommends, and then the human just approves the important actions or um, what's likely to be or what needs to be implemented. Then you have the operational um, for your business. Do you want automation to update your systems, send routine messages, and provide or automate routes that are for your predictable work? So things that will come in, things that will go out, the lead generation and that sort of thing. So each one has an illustrative budget that you want to have in mind. So if AI is drafting everything and just recommends and the human just approves stuff, you have a budget of between 500 to £2,500. For setup, then the more complex, then the prices do go up, right? That should be expected. Right. So before approving any automation task, there are five numbers that you want to have at the top of mind. What is the full implementation cost? How much internal time will be required to put this in? What is the monthly operating cost? What happens when it fails? And how will value be measured? So if you have those five numbers and have those five things clearly defined after you've scoped and assessed, then you can make a decision as to whether to approve the automation to go ahead or not. So think about the monthly net benefit to your business, to your organization. Is it freeing up your time? Does it mean with this automation in place and working, you're able to spend more time with your family? Are you able to increase the number of customers you can handle? Some people are thinking of 10x in their businesses. They can't do it with humans. They have to have some help. Um, is there anything repetitive, that's mundane, that machines can actually handle for you to release you to do other things that are more important, to release you to work on your business? And then think about the estimated payback period, the implementation cost plus internal setup time. You divide that by your monthly net benefit, and then that gives you an idea as to what is right for you or right for your organization. So the final message is that a cheap automation that solves nothing is expensive. So you just go put a chatbot in and think that that's all you need. That's not right. An expensive automation that removes a bigger cost may actually end up being cheap. So it's expensive to put in, but the returns, the value far exceeds what you spent to putting it in. So don't ask how much does the AI automation cost. We'll start from the end. What is it going to bring in? What value is it going to add to my business? And once you've answered that question, you look at the expense and then you decide. So what will it cost and what measurable value will it return? Saving me time, increasing my revenue, increasing my profit, and then reducing cost. Some automations do all three, some do just one, some do two. It's just a varying combination, but there must be a return on your investment before you decide to put things in. Otherwise, it's just an expensive toy. So I'm Ua. I'm the founder of Autori.ai, and we build business automation systems for different businesses. So we've worked with charities, we've worked with companies in the food and beverage sector, in the music sector, in the manufacturing sector, and each one has something that we're able to help them with, especially with automating different processes. It might be payroll automation, it might be margin tracking, it might be lead handling, lead qualification, quote management, all those things. It depends on what's taking the most amount of time in your organization. So do feel free to reach out, send an email to me at on hello@autore.ai. Visit my website, book a call, and I'll be very happy to sit down with you and go through your business and do an initial discovery to find out if there's any way we can help you. So thank you so much for your time. And until next time, keep winning.